Hello and welcome to another bad movie review. Today I watched The Blair Witch Project, straight out of 1999. This 87-minute wonder is about three college students who venture into the woods near Burkittsville, Maryland in October of 1994. Their plan is to make a documentary about a local legend of the Blair Witch, a ghostly entity that is said to be responsible for several deaths over the course of the years and inspired a serial killer. This is the first real found footage film, and don't give me any of that crap about Cannibal Holocaust, because that's not a real found footage film. That's got found footage as an element of a broader story, but the first 15 minutes where we see the professor totally ruins that. So I'm sorry, that one doesn't count. This is the first found footage film. I can't say that. Now, the premise is that these three college kids have gone missing, and somebody about a year later found their footage hidden under the remains of a cabin. The plot itself is actually pretty good, I think. It's very original, which means it's probably not a Hollywood production. And the budget was only about 60 grand from what I found on the internet. And in the opening weekend alone, it did over $1 million, $1.5 million, as I recall. And it's grossed 140 million. So that makes it one of the most successful low budget films, if not the most successful of all time. And that alone gives it a good standing in the history of cinema. And it also represents the first time that someone successfully used the internet to market their movie. They had a brilliant marketing strategy. They put this movie out as if it were real. There were teasers that led you to the website, and the website had missing posters and all kinds of information, and it created quite a stir with a lot of people. The internet was still not widely used up until around the late 90s. So this is the type of story that could be real. And at the time, the internet was sort of exploding, becoming more and more used on college campuses, and what we commonly call the internet anyway, with, images and things like that. Not just the bulletin boards that the super nerds were using in the 80s and the MIT guys were using in the 60s and 70s. Or Al Gore was inventing, if you ask him. So, yeah, this was the first real good use of a website to market a movie. So there was a lot of buzz, a lot of controversy about it. A lot of people thought it was real. Rumor has it that Heather Donahue, one of the actresses, that her mother was receiving cards and letters of condolence about her missing and or dead daughter. So there's that. That would be a little disturbing, I think, or hilarious, depending on your sense of humor. But overall, the found footage aspect of the film is actually really fun. It really creates a contrast in it, because you have the film cameras and you have the home video cameras, and the home video cameras definitely reflect 1990s technology. And it also really saved a lot of money on the budget, I'm sure. But as the movie ages, I think that makes it a better aspect, because it's really trapped in a moment of time. You don't have the high quality film aspect that a lot of Hollywood films would have. This has more of a intimate feel to it that really pulls you in. And because it has that dated 90s technology look, it will always be preserved and thought of as being in the 90s in the moment that it's supposed to be thought of, when these kids supposedly went missing. It has a certain amount of gruffness and rough around the edges look to it, because the video cams are shaky. They didn't have Steadicam technology really hammered out yet, so there's a little bouncing, and when people are running, the camera's all over the place. So it has that intimate feel of someone's home movies, and it really does pull you in, and it makes you become involved in the film, emotionally invested, and you have a sense of being there because you're seeing through someone else's eye, or in this case, a video camera's eye. And the shots they use with the actual film camera tend to be much more artistic and more like a normal movie would be shot. Whereas the video camera scenes really, you're seeing through like you're there seeing the people that are talking, and it creates much more of that connection. So I think the movie works on that level. People do complain about this one a lot, but I really don't understand a lot of the complaints. I think they're petty. The major complaint that I would agree with is that the shaky cam can make a lot of people nauseous. When I saw this in the theater, my friend Isaac thought he was going to throw up about 5 times through the entire film. So, yeah, I know that firsthand. He had to close his eyes every time they started running. And he kept complaining to me. He's like, I'm gonna go, man. No, just sit it out. But he ended up toughing it out. But yeah, this one, it's not for everyone. It definitely has some very artistic feel to it. But the fact that it created an entire subgenre within mainly horror films, although it is branching out into other areas, like movies like Hardcore Henry, I think have a little bit of inspiration drawn from the Blair Witch Project and from first-person shooters. But I think the ability to get movies like that made can be stemmed from the massive success of the Blair Witch Project. So it's not just the technical merits that make the movie, it's also the impact that it had in the filmmaking industry and pop culture as a whole. You'll see lots and lots of references to this movie in other horror films, in other forms of pop culture, and not to mention the weird knockoffs like the Erotic Witch Project and some of the other like softcore knockoffs of it. So it's had quite an impact in the 17 years since it was made. And apparently, as of this recording in 2016, there is a new Blair Witch Project, or new Blair Witch movie coming out, which would make it the 3rd in the series, which I will review at some point when I get around to watching it. I'm going to review the second movie first, obviously. But overall, I really enjoy this film for all these reasons. It has a great mythology. It had really great marketing plan. The success opened the door for a lot of other independent filmmakers that probably would never have been able to get funding, and they were able to work with lower grade equipment, more digital stuff that was in development because it was cheaper, and even though it was a little grainier, they're like, well, it worked for Blair Witch. So I think that's a good aspect of the movie, but I also did enjoy the actual plot of the film. Watching 3 morons run through the woods and do the most insanely stupid things is weirdly entertaining to me. I know that's kind of rough, but when you're rooting for the bad guy, sometimes that's what happens. Honestly, I'm surprised these people didn't kill themselves because they're idiots. No offense to the actors, but they could have gotten a 12-year-old Boy Scout with an orienteering merit badge to guide them out of the stupid woods. They got lost every turn. Oh, let's just go north today. Well, you're walking around in circles because you're an idiot. Anybody who's ever had any time in the woods knows you follow the river out. So if you're ever lost in the woods, you find a river, go downstream. There's probably a town. That's just basic survival skills. Not only would you have a source of water, everything has to go eat and drink water so you can catch some game and kill it and eat it. So you're not going to die in the woods then. And most towns, especially on the east coast of the U.S., are built around streams because people needed water. And when you're in Maryland, there's a lot of towns around water. So, yeah, you kind of knew something bad was going to happen to these people after about 10 minutes because, they're not the sharpest. There's not a lot of planning involved. All the food they bought was junk food. But that aside, let's talk about the acting. The actors all did a pretty good job. At the beginning, it's a little rough. You kind of get the feel of a low-budget film. But as it goes, there's some genuine fear and stress evident in their voices and on their faces. And I think that that was done by the way they harassed the crew harassed the actors. Apparently, they actually were out camping as part of the filming process, and they were giving them less food and making them walk more, and just generally harassing them and just giving them ideas of what to do, how to respond, and kind of improvising it a little bit from what I could tell. But the commentary tracks, I highly recommend getting this on DVD so you can hear the commentary tracks by the directors and producers and the actors, because the way they made the movie is actually kind of more interesting than the actual movie. And they built up all this mythology within the movie too that I think was really, really well thought out and well done. They got people off the street to do these jobs as like extras that they were interviewing in this for the documentary aspect of the movie. And those guys did great because they come off as natural, normal people. They don't come off as actors. So, and some of them are kind of weird. And that works. Everything about that worked for me in the movie. And another element that I really liked was the Curse of the Blair Witch mockumentary. It's a fake documentary that was put together about these kids being missing. I believe it aired on MTV, but it's almost always included with the DVD copies, and I think it was even included in a couple of the VHS copies. And I think that was one of the better elements of this entire story. So it has kind of an all-encompassing, holistic approach to it. They did the website, the mockumentary, and the actual movie, and they're all tied in together, and it really came together really well. But from what I could tell, the story is actually based off of a semi-true legend, the legend of Mole Dyer from Leonardstown, Maryland. And that's a pretty scary ghost story about a woman that was run out of town, being accused of being a witch, and she was found several days later frozen to death with her hand on a rock and the other hand reaching up toward the sky. The rock is actually in front of one of the public buildings. I think it's the library, and it allegedly used to have a hand impression in it, but it's worn away over the years. But you can still see Mole Dyer's rock outside of one of the Leonardstown buildings. I do believe it's the library. But you can find all that online. But there is some basis in legend for this type of story, and the legend is that Mole Dyer haunts the woods, and there's a Mole Dyer road where supposedly there have been an abnormal amount of accidents and things like that. It's a very interesting ghost story, and I think that helped inspire this one. A lot of people attribute the Blair Witch story to the Bell Witch of Tennessee, out of Adams, Tennessee. And that doesn't ring true at all. They don't match up at all. The story of the Bell Witch is completely different than anything in the Blair Witch Project. The Bell Witch is mentioned at the Coffin Rock scene, but it's a totally different story. It's more likely based on the legend of Mole Dyer. So I recommend, if you have any interest in that, check it out. It's an interesting legend, and it's been mentioned in a few TV documentaries, but it clearly had some kind of influence over this movie. But overall, I give this one a win because I really liked the movie. I thought it was a lot of fun, a very interesting storyline and premise, and you get to root for the bad guy, kind of, because these kids were kind of stupid. Like, oh, there's a big abandoned building where our friend is screaming bloody murder. Let's run in and check it out. Hey, we don't have a map. Let's just wander in a random direction. Let's argue a bunch. Let's be stupid. So, yeah. Never give the map to an idiot, I guess, would be the takeaway from this. And everybody should have a copy of the map, so if somebody were to say kick it in a river, you won't be out your only map. And buy a compass and learn how to do orienteering before you go on weekend jaunts into the woods, and make sure somebody has some basic survival skills. That's the lesson here. And that'll do it for this episode of Bad Movie Review. If you get a chance, check out the Blair Witch Project. It'll probably be on TV as around Halloween time. It usually is. And it's always available on DVD, Blu-ray, and I'm sure you can find it on VHS. Yeah, that's about it. If you like what you heard, give us a thumbs up. If you don't, let me know in the comments section. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening.